to a show.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Mats podcast. And thank you, everybody. Just want to get that right out the way right away because we're coming up on episode 250. I'm saying that because that forces me now to make this episode 249. So that way there's no getting around it. But thank you, everybody who's been, here for all those episodes from the beginning up to current, and those who've joined us along the way. And also, another special thing about this episode, it's a birthday episode for me. So, you know how we like doing the Dante birthday episode. Sometimes I get my wife to be the guest and I make her answer questions. So I'll ask her, like, so why am I the greatest thing that ever happened to you? And then it gets really weird. And then she says bad stuff. But we didn't bring my wife this time. For this episode, I actually wanted to bring on a teammate, as I love doing. I love having my teammates over at Crazy 88 on as guests. But I wanted to do an episode with this gentleman before, because I was trying to do group episodes with like belt ranks, and this guy went ahead and got promoted. So he kind of threw a wrench in that plan. So I want to welcome to the podcast my teammate and newly promoted Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt, Mr. Rich Christie. Hello, Rich, and welcome to the show, and thanks for doing this. How you feeling?
Oh, feeling good. Hey, thanks, Dante. Hey, happy birthday. So I'm sure this Saturday we'll have a birthday roll.
Yes.
And by the way, that's just a plug to get you out on the mats this Saturday. So no, doing great. Thank you for having me on.
No, thank you for doing this. Like I said, I wanted to do this before. I was trying to get a group together, of all you guys, because I knew you and a couple other guys were approaching blue belt, and I was like, let me get them now. And it just, I could never get the timing right. So then the next plan was like, well, let me go ahead and get a group of blue belts who all just got promoted. And I was like, oh, guess that didn't work out either. So I was like, you know what? Like, why do I got to do a group? Why don't I just sit down individually and talk? I mean, we train every Saturday and we talk like right after. I was like, all right, let's just get the microphones involved and record and find out your jiu-jitsu story. Because that's one thing that, I always like to ask everybody, when they come on is, why jiu-jitsu? What got you here?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Obviously, we started as a family. My wife was looking for basically something to do during the COVID lockdown, right? And we found Crazy 88. There was a trial 7-day period. And so, we came out for the trial. And so I had some previous boxing experience, just a little bit in college. And of course, messing around as a kid. Everybody back in the 70s, every kid boxed because we all wanted to be Muhammad Ali or Joe Frazier. But so this was 2021. And so I started off actually doing Muay Thai. So during that 7-day trial period, I did the no-gi class. And honestly, was not a big fan of no-gi. So I stuck to Muay Thai. And so fast forward a couple of years, been doing Muay Thai for a couple of years, really enjoyed it. But to be honest, at my age, because I started, in my late 50s, sparring with the younger guys in the sparring classes on Monday and Wednesday nights was not the easiest thing in the world. And of course, there were smokers and things like that. And I just knew I was never going to compete in a smoker. So I figured I would give jiu-jitsu a try and tried gi instead of no gi, and just fell in love with with gi, not no gi. Still warming up to no gi, but really fell in love with gi. And so to the point where it was kind of funny, I would, because Tuesday nights at Crazy 88 to begin with, when I got promoted to phase belt, I could participate in the advanced classes. And on Tuesday nights, it was no gi for the first hour and then gi for the second hour. And I would only show up for the gi part. I wouldn't show up for the no gi part. But yeah, so I've done that, and also there was an opportunity to compete at my age and my weight, so that was the other big advantage, and I just wanted to try that and try to see what it's like to compete. Um, and so that's another thing that attracted me to it. So um, and the sparring's a lot different. You don't, it's a it's harder in some ways, but it's a lot funner. Getting punched in the face, getting punched in the body, and kicked, even at 50%, it's not the world's funnest thing to have happen to you.
No, not at all. I'm not getting kicked or punched when I go to Muay Thai, but even still, like just when we're hitting the bag and I'm kicking, I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
I don't like this.
yeah. So that's kind of what brought me into jujitsu. And so it's been a lot of fun. Coach Keith, Master Julius, the guys in the room. It's really good, great. And so the Muay Thai group at Crazy 88 is fantastic as well. I don't want to say that they're not. That's a fantastic group, and some of the guys that I was training with, have gone on and been doing smokers and now fighting amateur fights, and it's great to see those guys really um, kind of take off. But I'm just kind of enjoying jujitsu. It's a little bit easier in my body some ways and much harder in other ways. But it's been a lot of fun, and it's just fun to kind of grow and being able to compete against people your age or close to your age. That's a lot of fun too.
Yeah, training in the gi or no gi, well, training jujitsu, it's one of those things where we can get away with a lot of stuff in terms of like when we spar. I mean, we've had rounds, you and I, where we're going at it and we're still very, very safe. And then there have been rounds
Yeah.
where we're just like, look, man, let's just work on things, just move smooth and slow. Let's just take it easy like, and we tend to take it easy on each other anyway, but it's
Yeah.
like, no, like, let's go easier. And I love that about jujitsu because you like, even if we went full clip, we're still relatively safe. So, whereas like if you're striking,
Yeah.
CTE, those little shots, it adds up.
It does add up. And I saw, good for, guy I was training Muay Thai with, Alex. He was a green shirt at the time. So, he's pretty advanced in Muay Thai, but he decided to do a smoker at his age. And the guy was younger than him by about 17 years.
Oof.
And so, that was hard to see. I was in Alex's corner for that. It was hard to see. It wasn't the world's office, but it's just age. He was a little bit slower than the guy, right? And so it really, it demotivated him a little bit as well. But I could see that, and I could definitely see me not wanting to do that. Whereas in jujitsu, when you're going against people who are your age and weight, you always feel like you can walk in and you have an opportunity to win, right? Now it comes down to skill, comes down to some endurance. It doesn't come down to, gosh, this guy's 17 years younger than me and he's got like a big speed factor on me or something like that. So now it's like, okay, we're fairly close. Let's see whose technique is going to get them through, or whose gut and grit and determination is going to get them through. And that's kind of what sparring's all about.
Yeah, that's one thing I sometimes forget. When we're in there training, we're training with guys younger than us and faster and in some cases stronger. I think we're still stronger than most of those cats, but yeah, it's just
Yeah.
my own ego. But I always forget, like, those days that I come home on a Saturday and I feel defeated because it's like, man, CH put a beating on me, or
Yeah.
Chris like beat me to a pulp, or even Mark, like if Mark
Oh
shows
yeah.
up, it's like, man, Mark made me just rethink life. But it's like these dudes are more than 10 years younger than me.
Yeah.
And I try to keep that in mind. It's like it's like, if you're thinking like, okay, if I go out there and compete against somebody my own age, my own weight, it's like I probably have a pretty good shot, because even though I'm getting manhandled by CH and Mark is giving me a tough time, it's like, it's not like I'm just getting mud stomped and have no offense. It's like you said, our technique will speak for itself. And there is a point of demotivation when you're going against the younger guys. It's like, man, why am I doing this? But then you're like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, like people my age aren't doing this though. So
Yeah.
that's one.
But when you hit a move against one of those younger guys who's moving faster than you, it's a big elation. I equate it
Oh
to,
yeah.
yeah, it's like the one golf shot that always brings the amateur back, right? You always hit one good ball around and it brings you back. Even when we're going against the younger guys, you hit that move or you get to a position, you may not be able to finish it. You may not be able to get, they may get out of it, but you're getting to a position that you wanted to get to. And that's like, okay, you know, I got to where I wanted to be. You know, Mark defended that well, but at least I got to where I wanted to be. I didn't make the same mistake I've made 500 times against him. I've actually progressed, and that's also a good thing, is to see yourself progressing, right? Because it's jiu-jitsu, unlike Muay Thai. So Muay Thai, in any of the striking sports, right? It really comes down. There's a set of punch combinations, and the meta there, or the rubric there, is fairly straightforward, right? Yeah, it's a combination of kicks and punches. No elbows are really being thrown, but that's pretty set. Whereas with jujitsu, in the gi, we'll just start. In the gi, it's all of these branches that you can go down, and it's something that actually not only exercises the body, but it really exercises the mind, because it's so much, okay, on the feet, I can do pull guard, or I can maybe try a takedown, or the guy's going to try to take me down and I'm going to try to pass. There's, and then and that just keeps branching out and branching out. And so you kind of got to pick a path that you like to do, and start concentrating on that and getting better at that, but understanding that there's a lot around that you can keep going out and out. So it's kind of like learning your favorite chess opening, and you start learning the variations on that. But then you have to start learning, when I'm not white and somebody's black and they play, an opening that I'm not familiar with, well, I better at least get familiar with and understand the principles there, so I know how to defend or I know how to attack. Same with jujitsu. There's so many variations as you start to branch out down the paths of where you want to be and what you want to do, that you have to pick that path that's your favorite path, and a couple of paths from that. But it just keeps your mind engaged, because there is so much there, right? And new stuff being invented all the time by these younger guys.
Oh yeah, the jiu-jitsu game is just ever growing. It's like once you think you got one thing figured out, someone figured out something new from that one position that you've worked so hard to gather all this information. And that's one of those beautiful things though, is like you're always going to be learning. And I know even for us, I always consider, like white belt, blue belt, we're still, those young belts, you know,
Yeah,
it's like we're,
yeah,
we're still very much learning. And it can get tricky because there's so much, but it's like you said, if you get a move on somebody, even if it's not even like a submission, like you get a pass, you get a sweep, or you stop them from hitting their signature move, that's big progress. And I love it. I mean, I love
yeah,
when we roll, you and I roll,
yeah,
and like you'll be working on something, and I know you're working on it, so I'll defend it, but eventually you've been working, even though I know it's coming, you still hit it. I'm like, dude, like you earned that. You've been working on it, dude. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. It is, and that's the one thing too, for us older guys. You got to realize the speed that you're moving at, and the way you're going to pick up skills. I mean, it is, one thing that I think we as older guys kind of get frustrated with is that we remember back when we were young and how fast we would pick things up. And we find that, man, jujitsu is harder to pick up at our age in one sense, because it's so varied, but also just in its fact, I think if I went back and I was 30 years younger, um, it's still, it's not there's a lot there, and you get shown a lot, uh, but you don't run into and get to those moves every time you spar or every time you train. So you may have been shown something 6 months ago, and then somebody get you in that position. You're like, I know there's something I can do, but you haven't seen that move in 6 months. And it's like, I just can't remember what the full combination was. So that's the other part of it too. There's so much there, and the coaches are doing such a good job of exposing us to it all, that you get something and you drill it for a little bit and you practice it, but nobody's doing that. And then 3, 4, 5 months down the road, somebody hits that move on you, and the defense to it, or the situation and what you should do next, but your brain is slow and catching up and trying to pull that up to say, okay, put your hand here, put your other hand here, and move this way, and you're good. So that's the other aspect of it too. And there's so much there that sometimes it's like, gosh, I haven't seen that or thought about that move in 3 or 4 months. Let me go back and try to remember what the move was.
Yeah, it's like last week what we were working on, which I voted for judo throws personally, but I got outvoted with inverty stuff, and I was just like, oh, yeah. But
yeah,
a lot of that stuff I'd already worked on in private lessons, and during those private lessons, it wasn't clicking for me. I just couldn't get it. But then when we start working on it, it was like, oh, wait a minute. I know this reverse de la Riva. I know this. Like, I know it very well, and I understand it, because after, like whenever after the private lessons were done, I would ask to record the move, and then I'd go back and watch the video over and over. So then when it came time, I was like, it just wasn't clicking. But then once we were doing it last, it was like, oh, I know this very well. I still couldn't physically execute it, but I knew it. I knew when you guys wanted to do it, I was like, well, I'm not going to let it happen. Like, that's why I learned most stuff. It's just to stop you all from doing anything, because it's like, I can't do that, but I'm going to make sure you can't do it either.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good reason. And that's a fun thing too in the room, because we actually know kind of what our favorite go-tos are, right? And it's great when you can stop him. Like CH, I know he's going to go for that ankle pick, right? And the times I can defend that, I feel good. But you're right. Those things inverted. Yeah, I didn't personally want to get thrown, because I don't know. Mahoney says he's got 2 or 3 judo, throws. Something tells me those are high energy, high in the air throws. And I was just, when he's like, where's our crash pad? I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't necessarily like, why don't we have a crash pad here? It's like, okay, I'm not sure if I'm ready for those kind of throws just yet.
I was just trying to avoid, because I knew if we had to invert, my fat stomach would be in the way, and I was just like, oh, I know I'm not going to get around this.
You did just fine.
I had to adjust. I had to figure it. I was like, well, look, my stomach's in the way, so I got to invert in a way. I think there was a couple years back, we did something in Keith's class on a Wednesday morning, and everyone's doing it perfectly fine. Then there's me somehow like standing on my head. Like I was kind of rolling off the top of my head and making it work. And they're like, I mean, it's working, but eventually that's not going to work for you, and you're going to get hurt. You might not want to do it that way. I was like, I don't know any other way. I mean, I figured it out, the proper way to do it, but there are times where it's just like there's our own mental blocks too, where we're like, I can't do that. I can't invert. And then, like I always tell people, I can't do it if you're like, hey, let's drill this. But if we're in the middle of a roll, I'll invert. And
yeah.
You wouldn't even know. It was like, oh my God, you can do that? Like, yeah, right? Like, yeah. I didn't know I could.
Yeah, that's the thing too. And of course, when we were doing all that invert and rolling around, you end up getting dizzy. But inside of when we're sparring, that never happens, right? You're not getting dizzy. So yeah, I remember when I think Keith was doing, the reason I knew some of those moves too is because we used to do those warm-ups. There was a season, where Keith decided, for a good reason, that, coming off of a Christmas break one year, that we needed to do speed drills and endurance drills to get our energy back up. And so, we were doing speed drills, and one of the drills we would do is one of those kind of inversion drills where you're going back and forth. And that actually those half Grambies really do help.
Yeah, yeah. There are times when I'll just randomly sit here in the basement and just do some half Grambies, and I'm like, I should do this more because I know it would come in handy. And then when it comes time in class, it's like, ugh, like I can't do this. I want to do this, but it's like, but you've been doing it in your basement. Why not now? Oh, people are looking. It's like, no, like no one cares. But it's like in
No
my
one
head,
cares.
I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, like I can't roll that way. And then also too, part of what was going on when we were doing the drill on Saturday is I was going all the way under as if
Yeah.
we're doing Kiss of the Dragon. It was like, no, 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 you don't need to go that far under. But in my mind, I kept thinking, I'm just so used to going all the way under, like I'm about to, do something else. And I was like it took, I think, 2 or 3 like different turns for me to finally click and say, oh, wait a minute, I'm only going this far, and now I can do it. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
the special guy.
I know you were doing just fine. You were doing just fine. So yeah, CH was showing up though, going all around, just kind of going around and around and around in a big circle. So
Yeah,
uh,
that was the inspiration. It's like, okay, if this guy's going around us in circles, like I gotta at least be able to do like one half of it. So,
yeah,
but
there
hey,
you go.
we get where we need to be when we need to get there. Um,
Exactly.
when because now you're at blue belt, but let's talk a little bit back to white belt days. Just coming up, white belt through phase belt. What were some of the struggles that you ran into as you start to kind of get your stride?
So there were the couple of struggles, and one I think is an attitude and a mentality. Um, so for me especially, and I advocate this for any of the older guys, you need to find guys that are safe to spar with. And usually those guys are going to be upper belts because they know how to spar safely with people. And so one of the things you got to get used to is when you're doing that, you're going to get your butt kicked every sparring round. You're going to get submitted multiple times, and that's okay. You just set goals for yourself of trying not to get submitted the same way, right? Uh, Multiple times. You just set these goals for yourself because if you actually take that opportunity, yes, you're getting submitted and yes, you're getting yourself beat all the time. But believe me, you are learning a lot from those upper belts, right? And you're learning how to get yourself out of bad positions that you've put yourself in that actually make you better at things. So that was one frustration. And the other was just your body doesn't heal as fast, and so you got these nicks and bumps and sores, and so that was a little bit that was a little frustrating as you're like, you see your body's like, oh gosh, I'm slowing down, my body's not healing as fast. I'm carrying these little nicks and injuries going forward. But you kind of get over that. But the other thing at the white belt level too, I think is not only finding safe partners and trying to learn and have that attitude. um, it doesn't really kick in. It takes a while I think it took me a while to learn this, but drilling is really important, and it's not about speed. I think we all want to, you know, I equate it to what my piano teacher used to tell my kids. Um, when you're practicing a piece, you practice it slow enough so that you make no mistakes. And when we're drilling, especially as a white belt, you're just kind of going through the motions a little bit of the move because it's new to you. Um, and a lot of time we're trying to rush it and go really fast instead of going much slower and kind of understanding the technique that's behind it so that we can understand when our hand is in the wrong position or our weight is in the wrong position and that we're drilling it correctly, because those are the mistakes that are gonna come out in sparring, because you've drilled it not necessarily the best way, and you've drilled it too fast, and you didn't pay attention to all the little minor mechanics like weight distribution, hand placement, foot placement, and things like that end up being those mistakes that the upper belts just kind of crush you with. And then you kind of have to learn, oh, okay, yeah, my weight's a little bit too high. I need to slide back a little bit. Oh, this hand isn't in the right spot. Whereas if we just slowed down and drilled a little bit slower, more precisely, really working on the technique and drilling that way, we end up being a little bit better at sparring right off the bat.
Drilling is so important, and I think most of us who train, we know this, but like you said, there's this point where it clicks, and you're like,
yeah,
because like there's a point when we're white belts, some of us, we go in and it's like, God, I don't want to drill this stupid arm bar, over and over and over for 15 minutes. But then, as you start to realize, like, wait a minute, maybe I should be drilling not just that arm bar, but also that triangle, that omoplata, half guard, deep half guard, whatever it may be, but drilling these different positions, because like I said, once you get into like regular like rounds, it's all smooth and where you need to be like half the time. And there's a lot of times where I think I can say for myself, I have a hard time because I want my jiu-jitsu to be the most beautiful jiu-jitsu when we're sparring. And there are times I'll go back and look at those videos that we record on Saturdays. And I'm like, that looked hideous, but I got where I needed to be.
Yeah. Coach Keith and Master Julius have talked about it, and it didn't click for the longest time as a white belt. When you walk in for that session, that class, to have in your mind a training plan, so that when you get to sparring, you know what you want to do, what you want to work on, because that actually helps you be focused on improving aspects of your game, instead of just, okay, we're just going to roll and I'm just going to go with it. That didn't click with me for a very long time. It's just like, oh yeah, they're right. Of course they're right. This training plan helps me be much more focused in my sparring, so I know what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to get to, what I'm trying to improve on. That's also kind of important too. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's just fun to get in there and roll and react and things like that, but sometimes that doesn't really, it doesn't. When I was just doing that, it was harder to measure whether or not I was actually making any progress in my jiu-jitsu, as opposed to, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to pull close guard, and then looking at my close guard as I tried to pull a few times, and it's like, ooh, this is absolutely awful. I need to work on this some more before I try to do it again, right? So that kind of, when you start having that kind of game plan of what you want to do, it's easier to measure how you're doing that specific move, if you're getting better at it, instead of just, okay, I'm just going to go in there and roll and just roll for half an hour, 45 minutes, and you kind of come out of that and it's like, oh, did I learn anything from my rolling around, or did I improve on anything, or did I execute anything that I wanted to do? They're different mindsets, and if you can kind of have that plan a little bit, I think it helps you progress faster.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think once I started recording everything, like it started to click a little bit better. And it's sad that I've waited this long to start recording anything, but going back and looking at the videos, looking at the instructions, and then looking at me drill, and then looking at the live rolls, it's like, you start to see where the plan is. Like sometimes I'll come in with a plan where it's like, I know what you want to do. My plan today is only to make sure you don't get that. I don't care what else you get, I just don't want you to get that one thing. It's like, okay, now next step is avoid that one thing. And then I'm going to add another thing to that plan. And then the next step is knock out those two things. But now I'm going to add a thing from my own arsenal that I want to get on you. And it's like, I try not to overload myself with things, but
Yeah.
I still try to have this idea of like, okay, I know I'm going to get to this position and I want to be able to do this from that position. And if like you don't take the bait and go to that position, now I need to pull you there. Now I need to get you like where I need you to be. Because I think there were, I want to say like 3 months ago to something like not too long ago, I kept trying to go deep half guard. I was just like, I'm gonna get y'all deep half guard. It was like no one's taking the bait. It was like I'm gonna force them there. It's like I still can't get them. All right, well, you know what? It doesn't really matter anyway. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna still do half guard stuff, but
Yeah.
we'll wait until they, because I felt like maybe they're expecting deep half guard. I don't know why they're expecting. Maybe because I'm lazy and they're like, look, this dude looks lazy and tired. He's gonna do a deep half. Not saying that that's a lazy man's move, but I feel like when I'm doing deep half guard, I was like, a little bit of a break here. Let me chill.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like being more focused
Yeah.
goes so much
Yeah.
further.
Yeah. We avoid deep half guard because anybody who's rolled with Ronnie Masgay, that's his game. And so he's always, you're always ended up in his half guard and getting swept out of that, so, I'm still
Yeah,
even working on my half guard game. I can get you there. And I'm, finally starting to put things together, like pulling you on top of me more to load you up. And Epps with me last night. It's like, hey, make sure you shoot the underhook first before you actually go the other side. And it's like small little details,
yeah,
and then pull them on, and then it's easier to roll, right? So it's all those things that work together. But
yeah. It's like every little bit counts.
yeah,
It's just like Danny used to say, Danny Ives, he used to always say, 1% better each time.
yeah,
It's like those little details. Because I think sometimes we look for like these big changes. Like I've been thinking about it also kind of as like losing weight. If you're losing weight, you're not just gonna go do a workout and then drop 5 pounds.
yeah,
You're lucky if you drop half a pound. It's
yeah,
like, okay, cool. By the end of the week, you might be down a pound, maybe half a pound, whatever it may be. But it's like the little bit adds up eventually. It's like all those little details. It's like you start like the Friday night no-gi classes. It's like adding little details each week to the takedowns. It's like, oh, okay, we
yeah,
got this inside trip here. Well, how do I get there? Okay, I know the big move is you know, get my hip turned this way and then get my leg through. It's like, but what are the other details? Oh, that other side, that underhook. I got to use that to force. It's like all these things, but it's like each time I'm adding something new to it, to make sure that it's going to be more effective. And eventually, then it's just like, oh, this is just automatic. Like your body just goes into it because you've drilled those things so much and you're aware of those details that you've been missing. So,
yeah.
we're growing.
Yep, we are growing, and that's the nice thing about jiu-jitsu. You continue to grow. You continue to grow. It exercises your brain. It keeps your brain engaged, and you keep your body engaged, right? Because your body is starting to go through and learn these things, and it's a totally different cardio than things like Muay Thai or striking, um, because you're using every aspect. There's strength that gets involved. There's running around. There's fighting through position. There's you know having people lay on top of you and trying to get out of that position. There's a lot there, right? A lot there.
Yeah. Um, there's, I don't know, there's like almost a point where it's like I said, I look at the video and it's like, I know for myself, just having this ADHD mind where I'm like, focusing on one thing is like, I'm growing, I'm learning. But then there's like other things you start seeing. It's like, I can start focusing on that though, and start, it's like, no, stay where you're at though. Stay where you're at. You got to learn these things here first. Like, stop trying to move
Yeah,
on.
yeah. I mean, you can get. That's one thing too. With I think as a white belt, um, and even as a young blue belt, you can get caught up in other people's game plans and what they're good at and start trying to imitate them or doing the things that they're trying to do, which may not be your strong suit, right? So we can start chasing the shiny object, but it may not be a strong suit, because that person's gotten there and it's their strong suit because they've mastered the basics leading up to that. So you can roll with somebody like a CH and he's got this beautiful ankle pick and you're like, man, I want to develop this beautiful ankle pick. Okay. That comes off of him having a really good guard pull when he wants to pull guard, and he's got this butterfly game. These are things he's drilled for years. And sometimes we think, okay, I'm going to be able to do this to the level of CH in 1 or 2 reps. Like, no. And that may not be the game that you're most comfortable with, right? So I think we also need to stay kind of within ourselves and concentrate on the things that we're really, that we're trying to get better at. And it's okay to branch out a little bit, but the things that you have developed that you need to get good at are things you should stick with. And then you can try to bring in some of these other things. But it can be really easy to try to bring in all of these things and have a really broad depth. You can have something that's really broad, but you won't have much depth. As opposed to you really want to have a lot of depth in something, but not just have as many tools in your arsenal. And I think at the white belt, blue belt level, it's kind of good to maybe not have so many tools in our belt, but to know the tools that we have. We know them really well and we can hit them when we want to hit them, most of the time. And we know where to go from there, and to the path that we want. So instead of having, 100 different things that we can do at a very, grammar school level, elementary school level, maybe even a kindergarten level, to having 5 or 6, 7 things that we can do, almost middle school level to, maybe getting ready to be a 9th grader. So I think that's much better for us. And it helps us stay more focused too on, and it makes it not seem so overwhelming.
Oh yeah. That overload can be just that overwhelming where you want to know, you want to learn so many things. And it's like, just focus on, a couple moves here and branch out of those moves. And then, instead of saying like, hey, I want to be able to do, X guard. I want to be able to do De La Hiva. I want to be able to do, like all these different, guards. And it's like, hey, well, like, all right, pick one of those guards and then branch from there. Like, what are things that you can do from those different spots? Because it can just, get to a point where you overwhelm yourself so much, it's not fun. And that's where it becomes a problem.
Yeah, you can't overwhelm yourself too much. I mean, because there's so much, you can overwhelm yourself with way too much information, and then you kind of get frozen sometimes in those sparring matches because there's so many choices. You kind of freeze because you're not sure exactly which path you want to go down, as opposed to, yep, this is the path. I only have these 3 things. I'm going to go down this path because this is the one I know.
Well, yeah. And that's just the thing. Just, sticking with what you know and making it work for you. So when you got your blue belts, how did that feel for you? Like, did you feel like you're ready? Like, were there any emotions there? What was going on in your head, man?
I didn't know I was going to get it for sure. I was hoping to get it. So I was really excited to get it. And then I was like, also like, the other thing as white belts, our jiu-jitsu game goes up and down, and we have these peaks and valleys. And there's times when we're really thinking we're growing. And then there's times like, gosh, do I know any jiu-jitsu? And you kind of go through these waves. And so I was kind of coming off of a thing where I think I was more on an up, where I was thinking, okay, I think I'm probably ready for a blue belt. But a couple of months earlier, I would have probably been, yeah, there's no way I'm ready for a blue belt. I can't even do the basics right this second. You know, you kind of go through those periods where it's like, man, I can't even hit the simplest thing right this second. And that's the other thing I think too is that, you know, we can't get discouraged when you know something's been working for us and then we can't hit it against the person that we've been hitting it against, because they're learning too and they're getting better. And you know, and it's like, you know, it's they're getting better, you're getting better, they're getting better, you're getting better. So um you know, I was really excited and I was happy to get my blue belt. And then I you know, I took Keith's challenge seriously, not to let this be the last belt I get, my blue belt. Um, but I look and I know that climb to purple belt is a very long climb. But I'm just happy to have my blue belt and maybe do some competing. And I'm going to compete in the Virginia Open coming up, and just see how that goes. You know, I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, it was really exciting to get the blue belt. It was really exciting.
Yeah, that I think maybe saw an Instagram post when, that you got and promoted, and I just had this big old smile on my face. I was like, dude, that's awesome. Now I can wrist lock him with no complaints.
Believe me, Epps was wrist locking me all the time as a white belt, so I got used to it.
Yeah, it's. I know we're not supposed to wrist lock white belts, and there's a clip that just I was on someone else's podcast, and the clip they chose to use was of me saying, "Yeah, you know, like sometimes I wrist lock white belts, and sometimes I told them it's okay to wrist lock me." It's like, oh no, that's like we had a full hour conversation, lady. That's the clip you chose. But yeah, it's funny because the whole like, you know, don't wrist lock the white belts thing. It's like, dude, I've been getting wrist locks since I was a white belt. I remember,
Oh yeah,
I think one of the first times I met Navarro, he wrist locked me, and I don't think I knew what a wrist lock was, and I was really confused and I didn't understand. I was like, why is this happening to me? But
yeah,
yeah, when I saw the picture, you know, I was like, oh my goodness, dude, that's so awesome. You know, it's, you know, me rolling with you and like we train every Saturday. It's like, you know, as you're hitting sweeps on me and you know your shoulder pressure is just it's one of those things where it's like I know if I don't react and don't escape before you lock down and side control, that shoulder pressure is going to make me pay. So like just think about those things. It's like, yeah, this dude, like I'm super proud of him and just happy to see it. So
yeah,
congrats on
yeah.
that.
Thanks, thank you very much. Yeah, it's kind of funny when you guys talked about that shoulder pressure. That's just one of those things that developed over time. Um, and it's one of those things that I didn't necessarily intentionally work on, but it's just one of those things because you start to know the technique and you start to know where you want to put your shoulder and where it should be. It's just one of those things that actually develop naturally over time. It's like, you know, I was tired of people just busting out of my side control. So you start making those minor adjustments, right? You start making those little adjustments, and that shoulder pressure is one of those things that just came from that adjustment of being heavy on somebody, right? And heavy in the right way. I think a lot of us think, you know, as Coach Keith and those guys talk about, we used to think that being heavy was about weight, but really no, it's about pressure and where you're putting your pressure and how you're applying that pressure. It isn't about how much you weigh, because I've had people who have outweighed me by 40, 50 pounds that, you know, they don't put in the right pressure and it's easy to escape from. But I've had some people who have been, you know, who weigh a lot less than me, that you can feel the intense pressure that they're put on. They feel so extremely heavy because they are so tightly glued to your body.
Yeah, that's one of those statements that I just think, you know, doesn't get enough shout out there. It's like that pressure makes all the difference in being heavy. People, like you said, think, sometimes I think they think it's just be dead weight. And it's like, no, 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 dead weight I'm going to get from under that. But you
Yeah.
put that shoulder pressure in the right spot, or even hip pressure at times in the right
Yep.
spots. It sometimes is confusing because it's like, I know I don't want to be there, but it sucks so much. I don't know how to get away from here. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
A
powerful.
perfect example. I was rolling with Andy. He's a wrestling coach. I was rolling with him last week, and we're in the gi, and basically, uh, we're both blue belts, but I outweigh him by about 20 pounds or so, 25 pounds. Um, and I made one of those dumb mistakes and ended up in turtle, and he kind of flattened me out, the wrestler way, but his hip pressure into my back made it extremely hard for me to get back to my knees. It was almost like his pressure was so good. It was like, I'm finding it very, very hard to move. And it's not that he outweighed me. I outweighed him by 25 pounds, but the pressure that he was able to apply just made me feel like this is extremely hard to move. It's almost like I can't get back to my knees to try to get out of this position.
Yeah. It's like some folks, they've got it dialed in,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things where it's like, if you let them get there, they're going to make you pay. I mean, it's like if you get a sweep on me and we're positioning you're going to side control. I'm like, I can't hang out. I have to move before he settles in, because if not, my neck is going to be hurting for a while, just because once that shoulder hits like that jawline, I'm like,
Yeah, and that's what I'm using to try to help get myself over, so I can get over that mount and escape that getting put in the half guard as I'm trying to come across. Although, Brand Epps looked at my move to mount. What was it, on Saturday, and said, or not this Saturday, maybe the previous Saturday. He's like, "Oh my gosh, that's absolutely awful." And I had to agree with him. It was one of the worst. It was one of the worst mount attempts I ever did. It's like, yeah, it was bad. Yep, it was bad. But you know what? The shoulder pressure into the half guard helped me get across anyway.
Yeah. I mean, like, let's not worry about like the look of it as of right now. Just just understand that I'm working on something here, and baby steps,
Yeah.
okay? Baby
Yeah.
steps.
Yeah. It was absolutely awful though. And it's like, oh man, I can't believe I just did that. That was one of the worst mount attempts I've ever made.
I mean,
It happens though.
we're growing.
Yeah, we're
Um,
growing.
so for you transitioning from white belt to blue belt, what's been, and I know it's still fresh, it's still pretty fresh, but what's been the hardest part of that transition from white to blue for you so far?
I think it's been more on myself. I think really, I noticed a lot of blue belts say that, the white belts they roll with, once they get promoted to blue, it's like a totally different level. So I was anticipating that, but I've been rolling a lot with the same partners because they're safe. Um, and I'm losing to them still the same ways at times. But I don't feel like that's been the biggest thing. I think it's been more a little bit of internal pressure, where I felt that I need to be much better at the basics as I'm hitting, especially if I'm going against the white belt. And so I've kind of put more pressure on myself. But rolling with the upper belts, I just feel actually a little bit more relaxed. Um, and that's been comfortable. And I haven't had a whole bunch of white belts come charging at me and doing crazy things. And I think that's because I'm older. Now, if I was an adult level, I'm sure the white belts would be totally different. Those young white belts would be totally different. But since I'm much older, people like CH, Epps, even Navarro, those guys kind of also understand that, they're trying not to injure people. But they're not necessarily holding back on some of their tactics too. So I am seeing a little bit more of their advanced tactics. And that's been fun too, because it's like, oh, okay. And they're less likely to let one of my mistakes go. At certain times they'll let a white belt's mistake go a little bit and let the white belt recover. I remember some of that. Nowadays, it's just straight out punishment. You make that mistake, they're going to punish you right off the bat. They won't give you that. Oh, I'll let him recover from this. I'll give him 3 or 4 seconds to realize he's in a bad position and recover. No, you get to that. You make that mistake, they pounce on it.
Oh yeah, yeah. It used to be the idea of like, are you sure you want to do that? Now it's like, well, you made that, you made the decision, so
Yeah.
you clearly know
Yep.
what you're doing. You should, so I'm going to make you pay. And
Yep.
sometimes we still don't
Exactly.
know.
No, we still don't know. No, we still
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
So
But that's part of the process though, because you may not have known going into that moment, but next time. I think uh what I got arm barred recently, and it was a silly arm bar. I'm not sure where it came from, but I know I should not have been there. And I extended my arms for my right arm for some reason, and I got caught. And I was like, "Oh my god, where'd that come from?" And then I did it again, the same exact like the very next like slap bump. Boom, did it again. I was like, okay, all right, all right. So now I know that's just not an option. That's not. And I caught myself this week though, rolling with people, not doing it. I was like, I will not put my arm there. Y'all might not know what happened. Y'all might not know about that experience, but I don't know. I don't trust y'all now. So,
yeah.
yeah, they're gonna make us pay.
Yep. That's exactly it. They make us pay. So yeah, I was rolling with Navarro last night. It's one of those gentle rolls because I have no qualms to know that I am not even close to being in Navarro Chamberlain's. But it's always fun rolling with him because he's always teaching you some things, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
I did something and I said to myself, that was a dumb beginning white belt mistake. How did I do that just now? You still make those, you will still do those very stupid things where your mind says, that's a good idea. And then you realize, like, are you kidding yourself? That is nothing more than getting yourself squished, right?
Yeah. I think there's a kind of an automatic to at a certain stage, where you just do things
Yeah.
automatically out of
Yeah.
comfort, and there's just bad habits. And it's like, oh
Yeah.
no, like why'd I do that? But over time, we get out of those bad habits, and we start to, that's the beauty of learning jujitsu is like we learn not to make those little mistakes because, like we were saying earlier, those little corrections go a long way, and correcting those little mistakes do the same
Yeah.
thing. It all adds up, and a lot of our team will show us that,
Oh,
and
yeah. They surely will.
you know,
Yep.
sometimes sometimes you pick up on it quick. Sometimes you might have to make that same mistake 3 times in a row before you say, you know what, maybe I shouldn't put my hand there because I keep getting wrist locked. That's a
Yep.
poor choice, but hey, it's all about
Yep.
learning.
It's all about learning.
So for you at this point, when you look at your journey, thus far, is there anything that you look at now and you're like, man, I wish I would have, been told this, or I wish I would have known this, those first few months as a white belt?
Yeah. I think the one thing I think I wish I would have known, or I wish I would have just thought about more, is how to practice the moves that the coaches are teaching. And you kind of go through this, white belts I know in the basic class get a little frustrated, um, because we're going through that curriculum, and it goes from starting on your feet all the way down and back again. I think to realize the importance that the next time that you see that curriculum, that things that that you've been taught, you're now working on how to make those much better, and not just thinking, oh gosh, we're doing stand up again. Oh, I don't like stand up. Oh, can't wait till we get to the back or whatever, but to really start to pick up and use those opportunities as you're getting exposed to that curriculum a second time, to start to really focus on the techniques and getting much better at that point, so that as you're, that it's that opportunity when you're seeing that curriculum for the second time around, it's really an opportunity to start really improving on the techniques that they taught you previously, and really start to ask questions. And I think that's the other thing too, is don't be afraid to ask a question if you don't quite understand something. I think that we're all kind of a little afraid to, can you show me that again? Can you kind of talk about where your hand was, or what you were doing? Because, the guys who are instructing, they've been doing it for so long, and been doing the move for so long. There's probably nuances to the move that they forget to mention, because it just comes natural to them. It's just like, and so I think it's also good to not to be afraid to ask questions and to kind of dive in a little bit. And whoever's coaching the class is walking around or teaching the class, make sure that you kind of show them what you're doing, so that they can make those corrections as you're doing it right then and there, right? Don't be afraid to call them over and say, hey, am I doing this right? I think as early white belts, we're a little afraid to do that, because I think we're a little afraid that we know that we aren't necessarily doing it the best, and we're kind of afraid to ask them to show us and point out where we're doing it wrong. And I think as we go on and we get up in belt levels, even later on as a white belt, we stop having that fear, and we start saying, hey, this doesn't quite feel right, or am I doing this right? And they'll come in and make those minor corrections that actually will improve your technique and help you to get something much faster than if you didn't ask those questions and kept making those small minor mistakes all the time.
Yeah, I ask questions now because I do still, even though I may have seen it a few times, I still want to make sure. But also, I know there's some white belts that aren't going to raise their hand. So it's like, hey, I know they probably need to see this, because I know I need to see it again. So, sometimes, and if Mark is the okay, I usually ask just to see him get punished. Because I'm like, go ahead and do it again. Let's see it one more time.
Yeah.
So with your schedule, how do you balance your training, work life, family life? How does that come together for you?
Yeah, so that's a hard thing to do. It's to balance that work life schedule. So, I've been fortunate to be able to do Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. At times, I've done the Elk Ridge class on Mondays and Wednesdays, the basics class. I've had an opportunity. Especially since when my daughter needed to go to Elk Ridge and she wasn't able to drive, I would just drive her, or as she was learning to drive, I would be in the car with her and we would go up there. Haven't had that chance as much as lately, just because Elk Ridge is a little bit of a drive. But I would love to start doing the 11:30 class, maybe on a Wednesday. Just as the work schedule. But fortunately, I've been able to very consistently do Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and that's that's good from that standpoint. And then I think when on the days that you're not able to go in physically to class, I have watched, it's kind of fun watching jiu-jitsu matches on YouTube and things like that, and pick up some things that are important. You may not learn the techniques, and there's a lot of techniques out there, and you can get jiu-jitsu on Instagram and try some of the Instagram madness or YouTube madness, but just actually watching a lot of the black belt matches too. It's not that you're going to be at a black belt level, but you start to understand some of the principles and the things that guys are doing. Like, anytime you watch those black belt matches, the black belts always have their hands full of somebody's gi, and usually at opposite ends of the body. So it's like, maybe that's something I need to be doing. I need to not just have my hands, and they're always breaking grips. Okay, I need to be breaking grips and getting my own grips, breaking grips and getting those are just fundamentals, but you start to see the importance of them, and just seeing and watching that helps you tend to go into the room and just practice that fundamental. I'm going to make sure you don't get grips on me. I'm going to get my grips. And then if you have me in a position, even if I don't know what to do, I'm going to grab some material because that's going to slow you down a little bit, right? I'm going to try to grab opposite ends of the body. I may not know how to exactly get out of the position you have me in, but I'm holding on to you, and I'm therefore making it hard for you to do what you want to do. I'm trying to help balance and fight for that control, as opposed to not having anything and then letting the guy do whatever he wants to you.
Yeah. Mahoney used to always say, still does, it's like, think of it like rock climbing. If you're sitting there and you got a free hand, you're doing something wrong. Your hands should always be attached in some capacity. Your feet should always be active in some capacity, because if not, you're falling off the mountain,
Yeah.
So, you have to be actively doing something, even if it's like, hey, I got a handful of lapel to slow you down,
Yep, exactly.
At least you're holding something. Your hand's not just sitting there freely, like flailing in the air. It's like, okay, like, because now you're about to get wrist locked.
Yep. Or some wrist locked, swept, tossed, thrown. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. Before we get out of here, want to throw a couple rapid fire questions at you.
Okay.
Nothing too crazy. Just a couple simple ones. Actually, one of them you've already answered, so I'm just gonna scratch that one from the board because we already know that gi versus no gi. It's definitely gi.
Yep.
But for you, favorite submission?
Americana wrist lock.
Oof. Look at this man. Just got his blue belt. He's already talking about wrist locking people. Relax. Yeah, watch out for you this weekend. Got a favorite guard?
Close guard.
Okay. All right. And toughest training partner, and why is it Dante? No, toughest training partner though, just period, like of all your rounds.
Whew. Man, that's hard. So Epps is definitely it's a Navarro, Epps, CH. Whew. Out of those three, I gotta say, I'm gonna say they all have different aspects. I think it's Navarro though. Ultimately, Epps. Don't get me wrong. Epps destroys me. Navarro destroys me. CH destroys me. But there's something about Navarro that he's got a flexibility and a strength and a speed that ultimately, if we were going full speed, there's nothing I can do to try to pass Navarro's guard. And every time I try to pass Navarro's guard, he sweeps me within a matter of seconds. Epps is not nearly as fast, and I can work a little bit with Epps and a little bit with CH. But man, not that I'm necessarily going to pass their guard, but Navarro is so good at guard retention that he turns it into defense to offense so quickly that it is really. I think that's what makes him the toughest.
Yeah. I've only had a handful of rounds with Navarro, but at no point ever have I gotten to a point where he's tired or I've had any upper hand. Like at least with Epps and CH, they'll be tired at some point. I'm like, yes, I can lay on them now. Like Navarro, it's never ever been at that point. It's like, so I can see that. And then the last one, name one rule in jiu-jitsu. If you could change it, what would you change?
One rule. I'm trying to think. That's a great question. Maybe the scoring system. I think you should get a point instead of an advantage for a legitimate submission attempt. You should get points for that as opposed to just getting advantages. But they have to be legitimate. I mean, it's not just one of these. I grab your ankle and make it look like I'm doing an ankle lock when I'm really, don't have it. But I mean, if I'm in there and trying to crank on it, and you end up getting out of it, but it's a really good submission attempt. Or if I really have a choke on, but you're kind of resisting it, I think you should get points for that as opposed to just advantages.
Yeah, I can see that. And like I like that. Like the person actually legitimately has to escape. It's not
Yep.
like you said, they're just sitting there and it looks like they're cranking, but they're not really. It's like, oh no, like I feel like I'm in
Yeah.
danger. I got
Yeah.
to get away from this guy. Um,
Yep.
right, fair enough. I like it. All right, well, Rich, thank you for doing this, my
Thank,
friend. This has been
no, thank you.
awesome.
Yeah, it's been a lot of
Um,
fun. Absolutely a lot of fun.
it's been educational for me. I take from every conversation I have. I always take as a learning experience, and there's been a few tidbits that you said in there that just made me really kind of think about jujitsu differently now. So I'm like, oh, I didn't even think of it that way, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, now
All right.
I've got some other notes I got to take and apply it to my game. So thank
There
you
you
for
go.
that. Um,
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, do you have any shout outs or mentions you'd like to leave the listeners with today?
Well, hey, shout out to you for your birthday and for doing this
Thank you.
podcast. And just, hey, all the guys I train with, there are so many great guys that I've trained with and really appreciate. So just shout out to all you guys. And you guys help me make me better every time I'm on the mats.
Absolutely. And the same goes to you, Rich. I mean,
Yeah.
like we're a team. We're all a team, so we all grow together. So
Yep.
thank you. And as always, to the listeners, thank you. If you got any questions, concerns, criticisms, feel free to reach out. You can find me at bjj.wiki on Instagram and Off the Mats Podcast also on Instagram. I want to give a real quick shout out to my crew over there at Nerd Rage Radio. Bobby, Chris, Joe, Marilyn Phil, Ricky, Tiki, everyone over there at Nerd Rage. We love you guys. I know I've been missing those shout outs a little bit lately, but I want to get back to them. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't be doing a podcast. So thank you to Nerd Rage Radio. I also want to shout out my other podcast, So You Like Horror. If you like scary movies, go check it out on Instagram. So You Like Horror, all the words separated by underscores. And we just recently released, because it was my birthday episode. The episode dropped on my birthday, February 21st. Go check it out. Dante's favorites. So it's in no particular order. It's just some movies that I enjoy that genuinely make me think. So go check that out over there on Spotify if you want to hear that. And coming up, we're going to be talking about, I believe, 13 Ghosts. Maybe, I don't know. But like it's scary movie stuff. So we're going to be talking about scary stuff. And then last but not least, I want to give a big shout out again to my teammates and newly promoted Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt, Mr. Rich Christie. Thank you again. And you guys, he's one of those teammates that, like he mentioned, safe training partners. Like he's also amongst those guys as well. So thank you, Rich, for all that you do. Thank you for sharing your time, and as to the listeners, thank you all. You guys know what it is. You guys keep listening, and we're going to definitely keep making these shows. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
They were with it. Now let me sing a song.